This is an SOS from the Trinidad. Location 7 miles off the coast of Venezuela. SOS, Mayday, Mayday, help! The Trinidad, a luxury liner, sailing the Caribbean Sea. Without a captain named Eric Williams. For years, it's old and free. But sadly, Eric Williams passed away. The ship hit water and day, someone turned the bridge over to a captain named Chambers. They what called, things start to fall. Hold me hand when I say I fall. When they tell me, Captain, the ship is sinking. Captain, the seas are rough. Oh yes, we got some almost empty, no electricity. We all pressure in the low. Shall we abandon that ship or shall we stay on it? I'm very slow. We don't know. We don't know. Captain, you tell me what to do. Whoa, whoa, oh, oh, oh yeah. Oh my. You know, boy. The Trinidad, oh, she was a beauty. With words that few surpassed. In her day, she sailed majestically. There were few in her class. Faithfully, she fulfilled her sailor's need. Some were overpowered by greed. So they built and slow. Some took Bible and go. Now she looked dull. She's at a lull. She could barely sit on her heart. What to tell me? The ship is sinking. Captain, this is our fire. We get that pollution, we know electricity. We all pressure we don't know. Shall we abandon that ship or shall we stay on it? I'm very sure we don't know. We don't know. Captain, you tell me what to do. Oh, oh, oh. Oh yeah. The Trinidad, in her day of sailing, she was a friend, a true friend to one and all. She never once ever hesitated to answer all SOS calls. And yes, what she always did her best to help all those in distress. Now it's so sad to see she's in difficulty. Though she didn't cheer, some of them cheer, and sarcastically declare, when I tell you, she was singing. What I say? Oh yeah, we got that almost empty, no electricity. We all pressure in the low. Shall we abandon ship or shall we stay on it? I'm very slow. We don't know. We don't know. Captain, you tell us what to do. Oh, oh, oh. Now there's a lot of fingers pointed. Suspicion keeps running strong. Who's to be blamed for all her failures? Who should we blame for doing her wrong? Now please remember I'm warning you. From the years she had to set through. When the keys to your vault, we know who's at fault. It's up to you, not up to me, to make her worry to move up to she's thinking slowly. She be sinking. Oh yes, we got that almost empty, no electricity. We all pressure in the low. Shall we abandon ship or shall we stay on it? I'm just I don't know. That's you tell me what to do. I don't know. You tell me what to do. I don't know. You tell me what to do. I don't know. Listen here. Take it down. Yeah. When in Grenada, I always feel fine. I want to talk to a friend of mine. Anytime we all meet on any street, I want you to take this message to Keith. Tell him I'm very sure he get a mandate like never before. But tell me what's next. Don't get the people vexed. Out of the way. I say, otherwise you will have to pay when they say, Captain, the ship is sinking. If they tell him, Captain, the seas are wrong. We get that almost every no electricity. We all pressure really low. Shall we abandon that ship? Or shall we start it? I'm very slow. We don't know. We don't know. Captain, you tell me what to do. We don't know. We don't know. Captain, check it out. Check it out. You know, tonight I was supposed to be in Toronto. And I said, I wouldn't trade this for the world. Not even for the money. And I decided to come and celebrate with my friend. It's all about it, ladies and gentlemen. And I want you as Grenadian people to cherish what you have. Because one of these days, you will have it no more. Show Wizard how much you love him. Give him a nice round of applause again. Happy 50th, my brother. And may God continue blessing him to see me anymore. I want to thank you very much for being such a wonderful audience. God bless you. We don't know, Captain. We don't know. We don't know. We don't know. Captain.
Oh, yes. A mighty gypsy, Captain. The ship is sinking. It is said that calypso helped to bring down the PNM government in Trinidad in 1986. Captain, the ship is sinking. Gypsy. And I know the ship is sinking in Guyana. In that calypso there, Gypsy was talking, among other things, to Keith Mitchell, the former Prime Minister of Grenada. Don't get the people vexed, Keith. And of course, Keith Mitchell get the people vexed in Grenada, and today his party, the New National Party, is no longer there. We have the NDC led by Deacon Mitchell, young man, progressive looking, progressive thinking. Captain, the ship is sinking. By next year, this time, the ship should have already sunk, would have already sunk. Good evening. We expect Dr. Vincent Adams to be here to join us as usual on a Friday evening. Good evening to all of you, wherever you're joining us from, whether you're joining us from in Guyana or outside of Guyana, whether you're joining us from the Caribbean, our Caribbean, or you're joining us from the Caribbean in North America, wherever you are, whether you're in Brooklyn, Queens, the Bronx, New Jersey, whether you're further up, Connecticut. I know quite a few of us are up there. How about those of you who are north of the United States? Canada. Those of you are in the Toronto area, Ontario. Some of you are there in Montreal. Wherever you're joining us from, welcome to Politics 101. Good evening, Maka. I see Maka is in the house. If you're joining us from the quarantine, welcome to Politics 101, West Babis, beautiful part of our country. Those of you on the East Coast of Demerara, West Side, the East Bank, and then, of course, the sprawling Georgetown, the various wards of Georgetown. Welcome. And if you're joining us from Region 10, special welcome to you, especially those of you up there in Linden, Kokwani area, Linden, of course, Kokwani, welcome, welcome. Those of you who are down the rivers, whether it's down the Demerara River, down the Pomeroon River, down the Essequibo River, down the Berbice River, down the Kanji River, down the Corentyne River. Welcome, welcome to Politics 101. Welcome to Politics 101. Good evening to you who are joining us from Suriname, French Guyana. Those of you who join us from those areas, welcome to Politics 101. Those of you who are up there in Region 8, Region 9, Region 7, Region 1 in the Northwest, welcome. Welcome to Politics 101. Good night. Maybe already getting close to morning. Those of you who are joining us from England, the United Kingdom, welcome to Politics 101. We've come to the end of a hectic week. There is never a dull week in Guyanese politics. Never a dull week in Guyanese politics. And we'd like to say that we keep the struggle. We keep the struggle going because it's important that the struggle continues. Special good evening to you on the west coast of the United States. Those of you who join us from California, and those of you who are joining, I see one or two of you joining us from Arizona. It's quite hot. It's hot all over. It's hot all over. Those who have been doubting, that we do have global warming, I think you're now seeing for yourselves what is happening in the world. Of course, we continue to shine light on all the terrible things that are occurring in our country. And we tend to ruffle feathers along the way. And as we must, Bob Marley said, I want to disturb my neighbor. And of course, I do want to disturb my neighbor. If my neighbor is out of order, neighbor must be disturbed. We have to make very clear that the threat that we will break the law and the fear of breaking these laws would make us shut up. The government uses the system to combat us, and we must be so fearful of the system that we do not respond. That's the whole game plan. But we're going to continue to respond. There is a conversation that is going on, is that something must be wrong with Guyanese people because we are not taking to the streets. We are not doing as the people all over the world are doing, whether it's in Kenya or it's in Bangladesh or wherever. People are taking to the streets with or without their political party. And they're doing something. And there is a logic and there is some validity to that concern. There's some validity to that concern. But if we are saying that we are human beings, then we cannot say that the lack of response, the lack of people on the streets protesting is a test or a testimony that we are not human beings. I think we're human beings. And the fact that we're human beings means that we will respond. But why is there no mass response thus far? Why is there not any why is the opposition political parties not coming together, and whether together or individually, calling the people out to protest the myriad charges that we have been making? There must be a political explanation for that. Why the other public service unions, in particular the PSU, there are others, but why did they not come out and support the Guyana Trade Union, Guyana Teachers Union? We've asked this question many times, and there must be an answer for it. There must be an answer for it. Why did the political parties not support the teachers in more tangible ways than, a hands-off solidarity? Why did they not get into the streets? There must be an answer to those questions. And the people who were able to answer those questions are the political leaders, are the union leaders. But those are questions that must be answered. Welcome to Politics 101 on a Friday evening. Can we continue? Can we continue to hide? Can we continue to hide, even as the government is not hiding its intention? It's not hiding what it's doing. Can we continue to hide? Can we continue to hide and not respond? It's a question the political parties, the leadership of the political parties must answer. Well, it's a question that all of us who are supportive of the opposition, all of us must answer those questions. You can have spontaneous political action. Why is there not spontaneous political action? In other words, we're asking the question, why the leadership, whether it's trade union leadership, a la civil society, or the political leadership, the leadership of political parties, why are other civil society organizations, the Black organizations at Pada G, Coffee 250, ACDO, why are they not taking the militant action that many of you have been calling for? I can't speak for other leaders. They have to speak for themselves. They have to speak for themselves. I'm saying that you can only lead people onto the streets if people want to go on the streets. And the people themselves are not going to just get up, put their hand in the air and say, we're ready to go on the streets. If you are political leadership, you will get the vibe where the people are ready to go on the streets. It is very clear that we cannot continue in this state. It has serious implications. The more we find reasons not to have street protests, the more emboldened the government is, because they read street protests as the ultimate struggle. And if they can manage to stave off street protests, either directly or indirectly, then they would be emboldened, because they would be answering, why no street protests? And then they, having answered that question, will then proceed to act. We have a government that is acting as though there is no opposition. And that's very dangerous. Very dangerous. It means that that government is going to overreach big, and it's going to provoke a reaction that is not organized. You see, if the political parties and the trade union, if they organize a street protest, it will obviously fall within the parameters of the law. If the government overreaches and people just, out of sheer frustration, take to forms of less organized resistance, then, as Dr. King says, what you're bringing out there, it is the need of the masses for attention. And often that kind of response is difficult to control. So the point I'm making is that the lack of enthusiasm on the part of the political opposition, on the part of union leadership, to engage in militant action, emboldens the government to overreach. The government is going to overreach, as political parties are bound to do when they don't see any opposition. But in the process of overreaching, they would be invoking ultimately some kind of response. And what our studies have shown is those kinds of responses tend to be less organized, less coordinated by political parties and civil society organizations, and they will be less predictable and more difficult to control. If we accept that opposition supporters are human beings, and that as human beings they are going to respond, then that response will ultimately come. So ultimately, it is the government that will decide how far they want to push this thing, and it would be left to the people. How much longer are they going to wait on their political parties and unions before something gives? So, the thing is complex, and all the actors here ultimately are going to be responsible. All the actors, whether they are the political parties, big and small, whether it's the government, in the end, all of us will be involved, and all of us will be consumed by the madness that is being done in the name of government. In politics, you don't get the opportunity to correct things 3 times and 4 times. Sometimes you have one opportunity. And when that opportunity arises, you have to seize the time. I think it was Bobby Seals who came up with that thesis of seizing the time. We have had the opposition leader on this program. He has dodged street protest. One would imagine that organizations would be very tactical about when they do street protests, how they do it. But the issue here is that you are not getting any sense from the opposition parties that they are interested in street protests or they're interested in organizing street protests. It may be that when the street protests, if they were street protests, people will call for more than street protests. We don't know. We don't know. But the fact that there are no street protests is cause of concern. Because it is not natural for there to be no street protests in the circumstances. Our political parties and our people have gone to the street for less than what's going on. The PNC went to the street after the 1997 election. The situation was less dire than the one that we have now. And the same PNC, well, it's not the same PNC because the leadership has changed. The PNC today is not biting at street protests. It's not a situation that can continue. It's not for the good of anybody. It's not good for the government side, not good for our side. As I said, the struggle of poor people of all races is real. The struggle for African people has a particular reality to it that is really dread. And I told the story that when I went down to the back of my village day, Buxton, and talking to people, and they pointed out to me that at the back there that they sell loose sausage, because a pack of sausage, I guess it's 6 or 8, I don't know, I think it's about that. And people in most cases cannot afford to buy the full pack. And so they sell loose sausage. People buy 2 sausages or sometimes 1, I understand. And sausage is considered quite a delicacy. That's not something they're going to be able to buy every day. That's the first thing. But it's that kind of abject poverty that our people live in this economy that they're boasting is the fastest growing economy in the world. And while one doesn't ignore the fact that we are the fastest growing economy, we are. There's no doubt about that. By all the economic indicators, we are the fastest growing economy in the world. But I bet that among the fast growing economies in the world, our economy is the most mismanaged and has the most negative consequences. So, what we have to explain is how can a fast growing economy be accompanied by the high levels of poverty, the high levels of school dropout, the high levels of ill health, the high levels of dictatorial governance, the high levels of ethnic discrimination. How can a fastest growing economy be accompanied by all of those maladies? There must be something unique about that country that can throw up the fastest growing economy that is accompanied by high rates of illiteracy, high rate of school dropout, high rate of poverty, high incidence of corruption, high levels of racial discrimination. How can you have a growing economy with that? I think the mediation has to be the group that is in power. So high levels of economy and high levels of dysfunction. There must be a mediatory force, a force that is supposed to mediate the good news on the one and the bad news that's accompanied. There must be a force, and the force is the government. Ultimately, it is the government that is not able to translate high levels of economic growth to low level of poverty, low level of school dropout, low level of illiteracy, high levels of democratic engagement. It is the government that is the mediating factor. I was talking to a teacher yesterday, and she was asking me to explain this thing. This is a graduate teacher that earns $210,000. So this is not one of the ones that are earning below 120. So she asked me 10% of 210, and we managed to say, okay, so you have about $21,000 there. So if your union were to accept, that is $21,000. And then you tax it, so it can go down from 21 to how much tax you're paying. And then this is a teacher that has a child in daycare. I asked her, well, how much you're paying for daycare? She told me daycare last semester was a certain price, and the daycare teacher said that them got raised when school opened. So we go through, we raise, we go through the rent, we go through everything. And at the end of the day, that $21,000 that is going to come from 10%, by the time we get to half of our expenses, that 21,000 gone, put up into negative. The union is asking for 40%. We went through the 40% that the union is asking for 39.5. We went through the same drive. How much 39, 40% of 2010 is going to be. And then we go through for all the things them that are going to raise. We go through for taxes. And in the end, she left with a little bit of disposable income, a little bit. And that's what teachers who's earning a graduate teacher that's earning $210. When we came down to the 50% of the teachers who are earning $120,000 or less, and we go through the 10,000 of 120, and of course that's $12,000. And we go through what the union is asking for. The union is asking for 4 times that, which means that teacher will get, in principle, $48,000 on top of what they're getting now. And when we went through the numbers, what a teacher got to pay for rent, some of them get car note, babysitting, etc., etc. Even the $48,000 gone away quick time. When we went to the graduate teacher who is earning $210,000, but who got to pay a car note, who got to pay house rent, who got to pay UG for what they owe UG for the graduate degrees that they get to carry them up to $210,000. A 40% rise will left a small piece in that mother of 2. We left a small piece in her hand. For those who are earning below $120,000, nothing left in their hand. So you see how systematically teachers are being underpaid. Systematically. This government who's supposed to mediate, this government which is there, we have on the one hand wealth coming in through oil, but that is accompanied by teachers who are not having a living wage. Who is to mediate between the wealth that is coming in and the teachers being paid a livable wage? It's the government. The government is the mediator. And the government in this case refused to mediate on the side of the teachers. And then you go now to the subtext. This category of workers called teachers, more than 75% of them are of one ethnicity or race. More than 80% are of one gender. They're women. And they're mostly poor women. So we are talking about poor African Guyanese women. That is the group that is being targeted. When you target teachers, you are targeting a general category called teachers. But in our ethnically divided society, our workforce is ethnically determined or divided. And so teachers, for the most part, are African Guyanese women. So in the end, it is African Guyanese women that are being beaten up by the government. And the African Guyanese in there is important because those women have very little income to circulate in their own communities. If you're earning $120,000, there are certain things that you can't buy. You can't buy sausage steady. There are some things that you have to forego Instead of cutting your son here 2 times a month, you got to cut it once per month. So the barber is not getting the kind of income circulation and so on. So these African women don't have much to circulate by way of income in their own communities. They don't have very much disposable income to serve as seed money for some kind of little business that can serve as a brace. So the fact that you're paying teachers, there's this thing as a multiplying effect, and it has an institutional effect. And so the government is guilty on many fronts, many fronts. Now let's talk about sugar workers. Let's talk about sugar workers. I hear you, John. John is asking, did former President Granger listen to anyone from the WPA? No, he didn't. It is not that we have all the answers, but we have people, we have economists who have thought through these things. And that is why I'm saying that one has to be clear and intentional. The WPA is not afraid to say that if we are part of the new government, we will support policies that are geared to all ethnic groups. And that is why our cash transfer is a transfer to families, whether that family is African, Indian, Amerindian, Chinese, Portuguese. Each family will get the same amount of transfer from the government. Some families, the richer families, may not need it. When we talk about the universal basic income, we are saying all Guyanese over 18 years, regardless of race, class, ethnicity, you will get a basic income. A basic income. So we will support race neutral policies like those. But we will also pay attention to the United Nations, which has allocated 1 decade and they're going to allocate another decade to deal with the particular consequences of enslavement. And there are particular consequences of enslavement. One of those consequences is that African people, because of 260 years of working without pay, they have an economic shortfall that is different from other ethnic groups, because all ethnic groups have to play catch up. If you were paid, you still have to play catch up. Imagine if you were not paid for 2.5 centuries. Your catching up is much more than other groups. And in order for you to catch up with other groups, there has to be a form of affirmative action. And the WPA is not going to be afraid to say that. We are not afraid to say that. That if you're talking about an equitable economy, you've got to be, you see, the inequity in our economy is not today's story. It's historically grounded. And so, yes, a universal basic income for all workers, regardless of race. A cash transfer for all workers, all citizens, all families, regardless of race. But then, even with all of that, African people will still be left behind. So now you have to now turn to race specific policies. So you have general race neutral policies, such as cash transfers, such as a universal basic income. Those are universal. Those are race universal. But because African people are so far behind, when you give a general thing, they're going to move. But as they move, those in front move in. And so the gap is still going to be there. And in order to cover that gap, you now have to go to race-specific policies. It means that if Africans are going to re-enter the agricultural economy, they're going to be behind others in that aspect of the economy. So to get them in that economy, you have got to give them some things that you don't give the others in order for them to catch up. The Granger administration had started with that rate project. And I've got to get Winston Jordan to come on and talk about that rate project, because that rate project was directed at 4 communities. And it was meant to give the necessary resources to those 4 communities as a start to closing that gap in agriculture. And when the PPP came in, it cut it. It cut that policy. So we have got to find race-specific policies to bring Africans forward. What about Africans in the private sector? You just don't go and open a business like that. You got to get the capital. When you go to the bank asks you for capital. For the most, Black people are not able to find that capital because there's no generational wealth that is come over. So just as you multiply wealth, or wealth is multiplied, poverty is also multiplied. And in order for you to make a break in poverty, you have to have policies that are directed there. So we in the WPR are going to be talking, we're going to be not just talking. Our campaign is going to be based on the alleviation of poverty. But the alleviation of poverty is several-fold. Alleviation of poverty among Guyanese in general, what we call race-neutral approaches, universal basic income, cash transfer, directed at all families, regardless of ethnicity. And we hopefully will attach a universal basic income, universal cash transfer. We're going to attach to that cash transfer school attendance. So we are hitting 2 birds with 1 stone. You get a cash transfer that is aimed at your economic wherewithal, but it is also going to link to school attendance. Your children will now have to be released from helping with the farm or helping to sell at the corner. They will now be released to go to school. So we are beginning to cut the school attendance. We're beginning to raise the school attendance, sorry, not cut it, raise it. We're linking. So this is not the WPA going around to villages and say, look at $20,000, look at $30,000. No, that's not. That is what the PPP is doing. We are going to calculate the government agencies. We are suggesting 10% of the oil revenues. And then we're going to divide, we're going to see how much that 10% in with the amount of oil that we sell for that year. So we divide that 10%, how much is it, by the 220 households, and that will be determine the size of the check. And so you will get a check at the end, whether it's at the end of the month or the end of the year, that will be determined by the policy, the statisticians and the government and so on, whether it's a monthly check or a quarterly check, a half-year check, or whatever the case may be. And so you are going to get the by law. No, you're not waiting on the WPA to come along and give you, because it's not the WPA money. It's not the PPP money. It's not money. It is your money, and your representative in the National Assembly will put it in law, just as the budget is put in law. That is where the WPA is going. People ask, well, what WPA brings? That is what we bring to the table. Our vision of a Guyana in the next 20 years is a Guyana in which poverty is alleviated. And we feel that if you're able to do that, we open up the possibilities of our people. And it is the reason that we are saying that we need all hands on deck, not just one party, the PNC, as its emphasis. The AFC has its emphasis, the WPA has its emphasis. And when we put the policy emphasis, the vision of each party, and we put them together, we have a larger vision. And so this is not just about removing the PPP. They have to go. Good night, Dr. Hines. Will the WPA study the pattern, its oil revenue, much like Saudi Arabia? Yes. That is the direction in which we are going. That is the direction in which we are going. And we already have our policy/oil and gas committee led by Professor Thomas and Professor Dennis Canterbury. In fact, they've already work. They already start to work and already start to put things in place. So our presentations going forward will be much more structured and so forth. So we have already started to do that work because we are anticipating that we have to campaign. If we're going as a coalition, we have to campaign. And so we are working out our campaign positions, our policy positions. And if we're going with one other party or two other parties, they bring their policy positions. Some of our policy positions may intersect, all the better. But that we will have a strong opposition platform, and we have to begin to talk about winning. And we have to correct the problems of the last government. Our government, the last government, functioned in a one-dimensional way. You know, it meant to do well for the country, for working people, and it engaged in what we may call race-neutral policies. Where it was lacking was the race-specific policies. Amerindians are living in the hinterland. There are certain economic challenges that Amerindians face because of where they live, because of the sectors of the economy that they're involved in. Their challenges are unique. African people live mostly on the coast, mostly in villages. They're mostly government workers. And so their economic challenges are based by where they live physically and where they're located in the political economy and where they're not located. I mean, they're not located in the commercial sector. So benefits that come from commerce are not going to go to Black people. We're only 2% of the commercial sector. So benefits that are coming from the commercial sector, what we loosely call the business sector, we Africans, the African community, are not going to benefit because that's not where we're located. If benefits were to come to the public servants, to the teachers, then our community benefits because the majority of our people are there. So we see benefits to the commercial sector. The government is pumping a lot of resources into the commercial sector. All those capital projects, those projects that you have to bid for, we are out of that. The benefits that come from that section, and that section of the economy is where the majority of the money, majority of government expenditure goes there. So there are groups that are going to benefit. And even if the resources go in at the top, as I explained, the resources that are going to the Indian community are going at the top. Those big contractors, big business people, and so on. But the theory of trickle down, what that means is that if there is any trickle down, that trickle down will go into the Indian community. So the Indian poor will get some trickle down. Benefits from the country, benefits from the business sector is not going to trickle down to African Guyanese because we are not among the big business. We don't own oil wells and oil blocks and 2% of the commercial sector thing. There's not much to trickle down to Black people. Because the majority of us are government workers, that's where we have to look to for the flow of disposable income. And the government is saying you all not getting more than 10%. So there's nothing coming there for Black people. What it means is that any serious government that doesn't want ethnic and racial instability will address the source. And the source of that instability that is lurking in the African community, and I rather suspect it's lurking in the Amerindian community. That thing that is lurking there, the government has to address it. It has to address it. You all may ask, well, why did Nigel Hughes do all that big thing? Is to give us something in our hands so that when we take government, we know where the discrepancies are. And they have to be corrected. We have to make this economy more equitable, not by taking away wealth from those who have more, but it's by giving more to those who don't have. It's not about taking away from anybody, even though some of them may have acquired the wealth in the worst ways. But we are not proposing taking away wealth from people. We are proposing giving more wealth to those who are behind. So yes, it is some form of distribution of wealth, redistribution of wealth. But we have to increase the rate of wealth acquisition by the poor. And like I said, we can do that through race-neutral policies. The WP has put forward two: a universal basic income for everybody, cash transfer for all families, and we are in the process of looking at race-specific policies. And one race-specific policy is to raise the salary of public servants, teachers, soldiers, police. To raise their income at a higher rate than those at the top. We can't have just a broad tax system. We can't have just a broad tax system. We can't tax the rich in the same way as we're taxing the poor. And so that area has to be looked at. And we have to increase the possibility of them taking more income. If they're located in the public sector, as African Guyanese women are, they're located in the teaching sector, in the public sector. So we have got to make more income available to them. Because the cost of living is not just the cost of food in the market. It's whether, in fact, workers have the necessary income to buy the food. If the income and the prices of food are the same, then the cost of living will be better. If the price of food is up there and the income is below, then the cost of living goes up. If you bring the price of labor, meaning the money you earn, up to the prices in the market, then the cost of living goes down. So cost of living is just not prices. It's whether you have money to buy what is being sold in the market. And right now, teachers can't buy what's sold in the market. Not with the salary they have, not with 10% raise. They've argued that they need 40% to just bring them closer to where the cost of living is. And the government is not giving that. So any new government, if I am the education minister, the next day I talking to my government, I talking to my finance minister, find that money. Then I talking to the union. Let's talk about what you will accept. And those teachers will get the cash transfer. And we're going to put a universal basic income so that they get it. And we will enshrine in law that once workers are on strike for justifiable reasons, you can't take out money from the thing. We're going to enshrine them in law. And this is what I mean by race-specific policies. You look to see where the ethnic groups are, and you improve the conditions. And in doing so, you improve the capacity of the race. Black men are in the police and the army. With all due respect, they are not being paid well. And if we have a claim on our territory, we are never going to get a big army, but we can have a more efficient army. And we have to have a government that is not going to bribe the police and try to pack the leadership of the police to protect us. We are talking about a police and an army. The police is there to serve and protect the people. The army is there to serve our country and protect our country from external interference. The PPP is not interested in an army to protect Guyana. It's interested in an army to protect the PPP. The PPP is not interested in a police that is there to serve and protect the people. They're interested in a police force that is there to serve and protect the PPP hierarchy. And that has to change. The police must serve and protect the people. The army must protect our territorial integrity, not political leaders. Any government that I have, the WPA, has anything to do with, those things are going to be changed via law, via law. And that is why I'm saying, if you agree with the policy emphasis of the WPA, join our party. Because, yes, we are talking about coalition government. But when you sit down at the coalition table, you have to justify your place there. And this country like to look at numbers, although we don't know numbers. Like I said, the PNC can't tell you what is the size of their support in the population. The PNC hasn't gone to an election on its own since 2006. And at that time, they got 34%. Since then, they've gone in as part of APNU and then later as the coalition. So you don't know exactly how many votes they have. The WP hasn't gone to an election on its own since then either. So, neither the WP nor the PNC. We take it that the PNC is a larger party, it's an older party, it's that thing. That is taken. But we don't know exactly how large, how small. The AFC hasn't gone on its own since 2015. And so when you sit down at the table, in the absence of polling, because we don't seem to have credible polls and so on, I know the political parties are doing their own private polls. In the absence of polls, we have to take support. And so we are saying to those of you who like our policies and would like to see those policies being part of the coalition, you have to empower us. So when we sit at that table, we are speaking on behalf of sections of our support base that are supportive of our policies. So, as I've said, the fact that our party has named its presidential candidate and it's rolling out what is going to be its vision and its platform doesn't mean that we are not going as a coalition. But we haven't reached that point yet. None of the parties has signaled that they're ready to talk about coalition. Each party is trying to organize itself, strengthen itself, so that when we sit at the table, we sit there as strong entities. We must not have any weak link. All our links must be strong. Of course, some will be stronger than others, and we, I think, have the capacity to work that. But no longer are we in the WPA prepared to work for a coalition, and at the end of the day, somebody said, take one ministry and take one parliamentary seat. No. We're not doing that again. We're not doing that again. This time around, we are going to earn our keep. And even if that means that in some instances, we have to differ with our partners in the opposition, then sometimes we have to do that. We have to differ so that we can come together and to make sure that our first order of business is to get rid of the PPP. My party believes ultimately in winner-take-all politics must go and that we must have a national government. But you can't bring the PPP into what the PPP is a domineering party. It doesn't believe in sharing anything. It believes in getting everything for itself. And it has people like Rafi Dev and them who are ideologically justifying that for them. We ultimately believe in a national government that includes all political forces. But sometimes you have to win first on the winner take all thing in order to get rid of winner take all. Because if your people on the other side are not patriotic enough to recognize that winner take all must go, and they still believe in winner must control with 50%, must control the entire state and the entire society. That's what they believe in. And that's dangerous for Guyana and for any country. So our first order of business is to ensure that the elections are free and fair. And then we win those elections as a coalition, which means that we're halfway towards a national government. And then work for a national government from there. But we don't believe we in the opposition alone have all the answers to the country's question. We do not believe as an opposition we are speaking for Indian Guyanese. We can't. Just as we don't want the PPP to speak for Africans, we must not think that we Africans, even if we win an election, the coalition, which is going to be majority Africans, yes, Indians and Amerindians are going to be there, don't get me wrong. But we cannot assume that we can speak for Indian people. And the best thing is to have the representatives of Indian people at the table. We cannot believe that we can win an election with a 1-seat or 2-seat majority and govern for the other 48%. No, we can't. They should not be doing what they're doing, and we should not emulate them when we get power. So that's where we are, sisters and brothers. I just wanted to clarify some of that, the issues from a WPA standpoint, and to make it very clear that that's the direction in which we are going. The larger vision, and then we have the elements of that larger vision, policy. And I'm saying no longer will that lady have to struggle selling or planting chip in the afternoons. A planting chip is $200 a pack. If she sell 25 pack, that's $5,000. She carrying home. And there's not profit because she got paid for what she put in. If she sell 50 packs of planting chip, and that's a lot, that's $10,000. When she take out what she put in, when she take out she labor of standing there, she ain't get very much by way of profit to take home. Because she walking. She out there from 2 o'clock in the afternoon till midnight. So she's doing an 8-10 hour shift. She got paid for thing. No. We're going to take some of that oil money, where it come up to $1 million Guyana dollar, and put in the lady hand as head of she family so that she can expand or tray to a snack it. So that if she sell planting chip, if she don't sell enough planting chip, but she's selling Marby too, and what she ain't selling planting chip, she could sell by Marby. And if she ain't sell by Marby, she sell cocoa rice or black pudding or whatever she's selling. So she's not dependent just on that planting chip. She gonna take $1 million And this is where those of us as community people can come in. Yes, I am sure people will make the wise decisions, but those of us who operate at the community level should be there to give advice, expert advice. Take your thing, turn this planting chip now thing into a snacket. You're selling 4 things. So if today you want to sell planting chip, you sell Marby. If you want to sell Marby, you sell cook up. If you want to sell cook up, you sell blackwood. And we give advice so that that planting chip lady is going to be able to transform our little tree into a viable small business. And that's what we're talking about. That's what the WPA is talking about. All right? The larger vision is there, but also we are saying to you, the ordinary person, how you going to be in this thing if we're in government. If we are in government, that's how we're going to roll. You aren't going to sell no planting chip alone from a tree. No. Because you're going to get your cash transfer. And we have confidence in you to take that cash transfer and move your tray to a snacket. And if you need the kind of advice, the community must provide that advice to you. On how do you move? What do you sell? Hey. So, sisters and brothers, that's where we're moving. It's not just about the PPP this and the PPP that. It is what we are going to do. On Sunday, the Coffee 250 is going to be having the State of the African Guyanese. The top presenters are Aubrey Norton, Nigel Hughes, Henry Jeffrey, David Hines, and IPADAG's CEO. And we're going to be talking about how, certainly I would be speaking about how my party intends to deal with the issues that affect African Guyanese when we get into government, or we're going to use the government to carry out the mandate of the United Nations. All right? So I'm going to see you all there on Sunday, the cricket people. I'm going to see you all on Sunday night. And then Politics 101 people, we're going to come back here on Monday. See you all.